Hot Shots feels like a movie made by people trying to break the room. Fighter pilots crashing for no reason. Charlie Sheen frying eggs on a woman's stomach. A volleyball scene shot like a perfume ad. A commander still fighting World War II in his own head. Every frame chases a joke, then launches another before the first one even lands. But under all that stupidity, the movie was built with serious aim. The director was making his first solo move after the legendary comedy team that built him quietly fell apart. The casting fight was brutal. The studio wanted one star. The director wanted another. And a Hollywood giant walked off before a single scene was shot. These are 10 weird facts about Hot Shots. The parody that looked like one dumb spoof and was actually a precision strike on half of Hollywood. One of the men who invented modern American parody spent the late 1980s watching his own voice disappear. For more than a decade, Jim Abrahams had been one-third of Zucker Abrahams Zucker, the team behind Airplane, Top Secret, and The Naked Gun. Together, they built a specific kind of mainstream American comedy nobody else was making. Deadpan delivery. Visual jokes stacked on top of dialogue jokes, the relentless machine gun comedic density that defines ZAZ as a brand. Then, in the middle of the 1980s, the brand broke up. Their own explanation was simple. There were too many guys sitting in the same chair. One directing credit meant one directing salary, and studios were not eager to pay 3 people to share a job they thought one person should be doing. Ruthless People in 1986 became their last joint effort, and the trio that had taught Hollywood how to land a parody joke split into 3 separate solo careers. Abrahams tried moving outside the parody lane entirely. He directed Big Business in 1988, then Welcome Home Roxy Carmichael in 1990. Both were straight comedies. Neither worked critically or commercially. The voice that had built Airplane was now being pointed at material it was never designed to handle, and audiences were politely passing. He later described that whole stretch with one sentence: wandering in the desert. Then his phone rang. The man on the other end was Pat Proft, a longtime ZAZ collaborator already deep inside the same comedy world. Proft spoke the same joke language Abrahams had helped invent, and he had been carrying a pitch around looking for the right partner. His idea was simple. Top Gun had become one of the biggest cultural objects of the decade. Why not send the whole thing up? Abrahams said yes immediately. The two of them shared the same comedic DNA from the start. Abrahams later called Proft the best guy in the world to write a script with. Abrahams would set up the structural beat, and Proft would fire off joke after joke on top of it until something landed hard enough to keep. Hot Shots was not just another comedy job. It was a return to the deadpan absurdist parody style Abrahams had helped invent. A man who had spent years wandering in the desert had just walked into the movie that proved the voice still belonged to him. Now the studio just had to find his leading man. The most important casting decision in Hot Shots did not come from Jim Abrahams. It came from above him. The man pushing for Charlie Sheen was Joe Roth, then running 20th Century Fox. Abrahams later recalled how the conversation went. Joe Roth said he liked everything about the project except he thought they should cast Charlie Sheen. So Charlie was actually Joe Roth's idea. On paper, the suggestion was strange. By 1991, Sheen was known for Platoon, Wall Street, Major League, and Navy SEALs. Action and drama. He had done one baseball comedy, but he was not thought of as a comedy lead, and he certainly was not the kind of comedy lead a ZAZ-style parody required. The role of Topper hardly needed someone who could play military earnestness without ever winking while the world around him slid into pure absurdity. The whole genre depended on it. Abrahams said yes to Roth's suggestion. Then Sheen proved why the studio head had been right. Abrahams's verdict was unequivocal. Charlie was phenomenal. As perfect as Leslie Nielsen in Airplane. He completely understood it. He has a real sense of that kind of humor and the importance of playing it straight. That Leslie Nielsen comparison is the highest praise in the entire ZAZ vocabulary. Nielsen had defined what their parody required. The dramatic actor who could deliver a ridiculous line without ever signaling that he knew it was ridiculous. Roth had handed Abrahams another version of that same instinct in a much younger actor coming directly off serious dramatic work. Sheen also brought something Abrahams did not expect: movie set humility. When he got on set, He acknowledged the crew. He just wanted to be one of the guys. For a director coming off years of being told no, working with a peak fame lead who showed up that way was its own quiet relief. The casting that had not been Abrahams's call ended up becoming the foundation of the whole movie. The next big role would not be that easy. Admiral Tug Benson was originally written around George C. Scott. The fit was obvious. The character was essentially a parody of Scott's most famous screen image, General Patton. Abrahams and Proft wrote Tug as a booming military authority figure, the kind of presence audiences would recognize the second he walked into the frame. Scott was offered the part. He accepted. The production started planning around him. Then, shortly before filming, he read the full script, and the project lost its admiral. Scott pulled out a month or two before shooting was set to begin. He thought the movie was too irreverent. A career built on military gravitas had finally hit its limit. He could not stand inside a Top Gun parody delivering jokes written 3 to a line. That left the production in a serious time crunch. Abrahams turned to Lloyd Bridges. The choice made perfect sense. Bridges had already worked with Abrahams on Airplane in 1980, spending the entire film delivering absurd lines with the exact dramatic seriousness he had brought to decades of straight roles. Airplane had quietly revealed that his old-school dramatic posture could become pure comedy the moment he simply refused to acknowledge the joke. By 1991, that instinct had only sharpened. Tug Benson changed shape around the new actor. With Scott, the character would have leaned hard into Patton-style blowhard. With Bridges, Tug became something stranger and funnier. Grandfatherly, oblivious, heroic, completely insane. A senior officer who appeared to still be winning World War II while everyone around him quietly worked around his delusions. George C. Scott walked away because the movie was too irreverent. Lloyd Bridges walked in and made Tug Benson so gloriously unhinged that nobody remembers the version built for Scott anymore. By the time Hot Shots started filming, Cary Elwes was working inside a strange gap in his own career. He had broken out as Wesley in The Princess Bride in 1987, but the movie had underperformed in theaters. Its now famous cult status was still forming on home video. Elwes was famous in a half-public way, a recognized leading man for an audience that had not quite caught up to him. Hot Shots was the first major comedy he stepped into after Wesley. The casting was a deliberate visual joke. Top Gun had paired Tom Cruise's Maverick against Val Kilmer's tall blonde Iceman. Hot Shots paired Charlie Sheen's Topper against tall blonde Cary Elwes. The parody depended on the audience instantly recognizing the silhouette. The extra layer was Elwes himself, an English aristocrat playing an American fighter pilot, his crisp diction against the macho posturing in every scene around him. Elwes's Kent Gregory was calculating, formal, and disciplined, but he was also the son of Mailman, the man Topper's father had supposedly killed. Two dramatic plot lines colliding inside a single character who took both of them with absolute seriousness. Elwes later said his biggest challenge on set was keeping a straight face during the toddler-level fights between Kent and Topper, both actors treating absurd schoolyard logic as if it were a serious moral disagreement. The scene only works if Elwes refuses to break. The audience laughs because the actors will not. A leading man still waiting for his post-Princess Bride breakthrough turned out to be exactly the kind of trained, serious performer Abrahams's comedy depended on. Hot Shots sold itself as one thing, a Top Gun spoof. The carrier scenes, the rival pilots, the volleyball game, the dogfight choreography, the power ballad montage, all of it mocked directly, beat by beat. But Top Gun is only the frame. Inside that frame, Abrahams and Proft hid almost an entire decade of late 80s and early 90s cinema. Audiences in 1991 thought they were watching one parody. They were watching 9 more layered underneath. The refrigerator love scene is 9.5 weeks. The nightclub scene is the fabulous Baker Boys, with Valeria Golino sprawled across a piano replicating Michelle Pfeiffer's iconic performance. The opening is Dances with Wolves. Topper retreats from the military and goes to live among Native Americans, receiving the name Tuka Chinchilla, which loosely translates as fluffy bunny feet, the camera immediately panning down to reveal pink bunny slippers. The dental torture sequence is Marathon Man. The scream is Rocky. The flying in pajamas shot is Superman. Rhett carrying Scarlet up the stairs is Gone with the Wind. Every act has at least 3 additional films buried inside it. That density was not accidental. It was the entire strategy. If a viewer did not find a joke funny, a brand new one had to hit them 5 seconds later. Parodying Top Gun for 90 straight minutes would have run out of fuel inside half an hour. So they stacked references across genres: romance dramas, sports films, Oscar winners, classic Hollywood. A movie advertised as a Top Gun spoof turned out to be parodying 10 films at once. That is the ZAZ method condensed into a single 84-minute movie. The film was parodying Top Gun, but it did not have Top Gun money. 20th Century Fox budgeted the film at roughly $26 million, solid for a comedy, nowhere near enough to stage a full military aviation movie from scratch. A real U.S. Navy aircraft carrier was completely out of reach, so the production built its own. The crew constructed a massive wooden flight deck on the edge of a cliff at an abandoned facility in California. By filming low and lining the deck up with the ocean behind it, the wooden set read as the top of a real carrier at sea. The horizon did the work the budget could not afford. Instead of expensive U.S. Navy fighters, the production brought in small British Fallen Nat light fighters, cheap and controllable enough to make the wooden deck look proportional in close shots. For the wide shots, Abrahams mixed in stock footage from other films. The carrier silhouetted by the rising sun came from The Final Countdown. Plane arrivals and launch sequences came from Flight of the Intruder. The big boxing crowd was lifted directly from Rocky II, the production then matching the ring and costumes for its own close-ups, so the borrowed footage cuts seamlessly against new material. Hot Shots makes fun of Hollywood spectacle while quietly using Hollywood spectacle as its raw material. It built what it could. It borrowed what it could not. The film looked bigger than its budget because it cheated beautifully and trusted the audience to be too busy laughing to look behind the curtain. The refrigerator scene was the most quoted sequence in the film, and the real story lived behind the camera. The single most famous gag, Sheen taking pizza from the fridge and rolling it like a joint, was entirely improvised on the day. The script handed him a refrigerator. Sheen handed the movie a pizza joint. But the bigger surprise was what was actually happening on Valeria Golino's stomach. Most viewers assumed the cooking was a trick. It was not. The special effects team built a ceramic body double of Golino's torso, sculpted in precise detail and heated in an oven to roughly 450 degrees before each take. Sheen then cooked an actual breakfast on it. Real eggs, real bacon, real hash browns. The sizzling, the steam, the smell of food cooking on a movie set, all of it genuine. Golino herself performed the olive belly button catch without trick photography. Whatever the food was doing on screen, the actors were physically doing it in front of the cameras. Abrahams also shot far more food gags than made the final cut, editing the scene down through test screenings until it played at the right length. The most physical scene in Hot Shots was the one where the production stopped cheating entirely. For most movies, the credits are where the audience leaves. Abrahams treated them as another act. Dead meat returned in ghost form to salute the audience. Mailman appeared as a spirit, standing next to a perfectly alive Elvis Presley giving a thumbs up, a direct play on the early 90s conspiracy theory that the king was secretly still alive. After the ghost cast came an actual brownie recipe buried in the same scroll as the gaffers and production assistants. Audiences who stayed all the way through were rewarded with something they could genuinely take home and bake. Then one final printed gag appeared on screen. If you left this theater when these credits started, you'd be home by now. The joke was built for absolutely nobody. The people who left could not see it. The people who stayed were already in their seats. It existed purely as a meta gag about the act of watching credits. One more joke, right when most movies are already over. In the summer of 1991, Hot Shots had a strange problem. The Naked Gun 2.5 had opened on June 28 from David Zucker, starring Leslie Nielsen, co-written by Pat Proft. The same comedic lineage, the same joke language, the same writer. Then, barely a month later, Hot Shots opened on July 31st. Abrahams later admitted there had been real concern about flooding the same lane twice in 5 weeks. The spoof comedy audience had no reason to be bottomless. The opposite happened. The Naked Gun 2.5 was a hit. Hot Shots became an even bigger one, opening at number 1 with roughly $10.8 million. The bigger surprise was what it displaced. Terminator 2, Judgment Day had spent 4 straight weeks at the top of the box office. The biggest budget ever made at the time. A phenomenon by every measure. A parody movie about Top Gun walked in and took the number 1 spot away from it. Hot Shots finished with roughly $69.5 million domestic and $181 million worldwide on a $26 million budget, making it one of the biggest spoof hits since Airplane itself. The audience was not tired. They wanted more. Hot Shots was the most prominent Top Gun parody ever made, a direct scene-by-scene mockery of one of Tom Cruise's most iconic roles. And Cruise said nothing. No public statement. No private call. No leaked anger. Total silence. The actor whose image had been most pointedly parodied acted as if the movie did not exist. 2 years later, when Hot Shots Part 2 went into production targeting the Rambo franchise, Richard Crenna refused to sign on until he had Stallone's personal blessing. The call went through and Stallone immediately gave his full approval. No bruised ego. A clean, generous yes. 2 actors at the peak of their commercial power. 2 parodies aimed directly at their most famous roles. One answered with silence. The other answered with permission. And inside all of it, even the hero's name was a joke. Topper Harley was named after the Harley-Davidson Topper, a small 2-stroke motor scooter produced from 1960 to 1965 to compete with Vespa and Honda. Possibly the least intimidating object the company ever sold. Top Gun's call signs were built to project danger. Maverick, Goose, Iceman, Wolfman. Hot Shots named its elite fighter pilot after the smallest scooter Harley ever made. Every other call sign followed the same logic. Washout. Dead meat. Mailman. Each name a setup telegraphing exactly what was about to happen to that character. That is Hot Shots in full. A movie that looked like pure stupidity and was actually built joke by joke, name by name, frame by frame, with more precision than most of the blockbusters it was mocking.